I'm Robert Horne, and I'm following the path of Edward Lear, artist, poet, humorist, and traveller. Lear was one of the few people to explore the turbulent southern Balkans during the 19th century. I'm taking his remarkable journal and drawings with me to find out what became of Lear's world. Thank you. Up this way. No. 160 years ago, Edward Lear travelled to Albania, an unknown corner of Europe as little explored as Central Africa. Today, it still remains much of a mystery. Well, it looks rather a pleasant place, Albania. Albania was part of Turkey in Europe, in the decaying Ottoman Empire. I've been following Lear's journey from Thessaloniki in Greece, and his path now takes me across the wild Albanian mountains to the Adriatic. Our image of Albania is still of a land lost in the past, an exotic oriental backwater. Can this be today's reality?
The first thing you notice when entering Albania from Lake Ohrid is the defence bunkers scattered everywhere. There are over 500,000 of them, built by the dictator Enver Hoxha, who used half the national wealth to do it. This one seems to be popular with the local sheep.
Behind these smiling faces lay the reality of the paranoid dictatorship of Enver Hoxha, sustained by public executions, internments, and death camps. It was the last communist regime to fall in Europe, and I am wondering what I'll find in a country that is slowly awakening from 50 years of isolation.
In 1848, Lear made his way through this rugged scenery in search of material to work up into landscape paintings. Few Westerners ever braved it this far.
I think there's quite a lot one could learn from his life, really. I think the first thing is his courage. And here was a man who had every sort of disability, who refused to give in to any of them, who sought to overcome all the things that were put in his way, and there were plenty of them. He didn't always succeed, especially later on in life. He became pretty irascible.
The difficult terrain was made dangerous by swollen autumn streams, and the pack animals often shed Lear's precious load of sketches. Lear describes such an incident on this very bridge. He's written here between Ohrid and Elbasan, and this is the valley between Ohrid and Elbasan.
Edward Lear is one of the most important painters for Albania because he stepped on our land, saw the places, met the people and painted them. For this reason, Edward Lear has a special place in our cultural history.
Elbasan is in sight, lying amongst rich groves of olives on a beautiful plain, through which the Scumby, an unobstructed torrent, flows to the Adriatic. The same deceptive beauty throws its halo over Elbasan as over other Albanian towns. It was as wretched and forlorn within as without. It was picturesque and graceful.
Elbasan's olive groves are still intact, but today they are dominated by the remains of one of Europe's biggest steel complexes, built in 1974 by the Chinese, when relations between communist China and Albania were cosy.
But the works were outdated even when they were first built, and the effects of 30 years of industrial fallout are still being felt. But Elbasan has a long history as a manufacturing and market town, famous for its bazaars, which unfortunately in the dying years of Ottoman rule, Lear found dark and shabby, a huge contrast to today's market.
Elbasan grew up on the ancient Roman road, the Via Egnatia. This famous highway linked Constantinople to Rome via the Adriatic.
The old Roman walled town looks much as it did over 150 years or so ago, but I wonder if the gate that Lear drew has survived.
It's a characteristic of Albanian cities that they don't have any street names, which is a problem. Let's see. I wonder if this guy can... Excuse me.
What?
Do you recognize this? Is it 1848?
Po, fotografia. Kjo është rruga Egnatia. Rruga Egnatia.
Where is the Rue Egnatia? This one or...
Po, rruga Egnatia.
This one? Ah, the Via Egnatia. That's amazing. So that tower is what? Is that thing there?
Po, dhe...
This is gone.
Po, it's gone. Porta.
So the gate here
Po, porta.
Porta,
Lindore.
porta.
Porta Lindore.
was here.
Po.
This is gone, the gate is gone, unfortunately. This mosque here,
Po. Në kohën e Enver Hoxhës. Jam prish këta baket, jam ba pallate.
you know, thank you very much. Fallimenterit.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That's terrific. Wow, the big tower in the picture is still there and we're on the Via Egnatia. That's absolutely fabulous. Gives me a real thrill. The oldest mosque in Albania still survives within these walls. In 1967, Enver Hoxha sent bulldozers to destroy it, along with the Orthodox cathedral, but they couldn't get through the narrow gates and streets.
Today, the mosque appears to be flourishing, and here I met Ergis Mutsaki, who is still employed at the steelworks as a quality controller. He explained how Hoxha had tried to create the first atheist state where religion was officially banned.
It was forbidden to believe, as far as you can interfere in hard business. Enver Hoxha killed, or they tell us, he killed his own friends, closest friends, his enemies. He imitated Stalin or the other Russian communists or dictators. Enver Hoxha's principle was to build an independent economy, agricultural, industrial, every kind of it.
S'dombete i lirë, pa klas punëtore s'ka yll në bajrak, pa klas punëtore njerëzit revolucioni si mbledh në të vetmin grusht, pa klas punëtore mendimi mbetet gjysmak.
Enver Hoxha wanted to make something big, and he did it, but he couldn't manage it.
The Chinese are long gone, and only a small fraction of the steelworks is still operating. At one end, a Turkish company recycles scrap metal, brought by relentless convoys of trucks from neighboring countries, and with a workforce of only 300, produces more than the whole factory did in its heyday, when 8,000 people worked here. I leave Elbasan's Valley of Steel and press on over yet more mountains to Tirana and the north. This took Edward Lear all day, but for me it was a spectacular journey of a few hours. Nothing prepared me for the traffic chaos of Tirana. A lot of Mercedes. A man on a horse. He's Skanderbeg, looking magnificent. So this, I'm sure, is Skanderbeg Square. Oh, good. What do we do? Just mile in, I think. Under Hoxha, there used to be only 600 cars in all Albania. Now, everyone seems to have one. When Edward Lear came here, Tirana was an unimportant but bustling market town. Today, it's an expanding, dusty, busy, modern capital city. Who would have thought that in Tirana there is a leading authority on Edward Lear? Ferid Hudri, and I have managed to track him down. Professor Ferid?
Oh, yeah, welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
This is my collection. Do you like it?
Absolutely. Goodness me. They look wonderful.
They're all Albanian artists.
Uh-huh. This one I love. Yeah. This is the same kind of era as Edward Lear, would it be?
Yes, it's the same period.
Even at the time when Albania was isolated from Europe, Edward Lear was one of the painters that we talked about.
Edward Lear ka qenë një nga piktorët për cilën flitet në Shqipëri.
Edward Lear is one of the most important painters to have treated the Albanian theme, not only because he has done more paintings than other artists, but also for the reason that he was one of the few foreign artists to stay a long time in Albania. He travelled to almost all the Albanian cities, and more importantly, painted some important architectural monuments that no longer exist. For example, a bridge in Shkodra, an aqueduct in Gjirokastër. And by good or bad luck, this is the only evidence that we have today about these constructions. For me and for all Albanians, there is a wish that is not realised yet. We don't have an original work by Lear in our museums.
The only way to get across is to dodge. Here's the BMW. There's a lot of very big cars. And, oh, well, there you are. It can be done. Take your life in your hands, though. Everywhere Lear went in Muslim lands, he needed a guard from the local pasha to protect him from the faithful who might take offence at him drawing. Lear was called the Devil, and he was sometimes attacked.
But even with a guard, it was trouble to sketch Tirana, for it was market or bazaar day. And when I was tempted to open my book in the large space before the two principal mosques, one wild scene of confusion, in which dogs and children were all running about in disorder. A great part of the natives, impelled by curiosity, pressed closely to watch my operations.
It seems strange, given his problems, that Tirana was distinguished by some very fine and unusual ornamented mosques. Lear had to battle against his accommodation, the terrain, and the weather. The typical Turkish wayside inn, or khan, varied enormously in facilities and hospitality.
It's the kind of place that Lear himself probably stayed in, a khan. But I think I might be able to do a bit better.
The sky was lowering, the crowds of gazers increasing. So all these things considered, I finally fixed on a third-rate Khan, reported to be the Clarendon of Tirana. Though its horrors are not easy to describe nor imagine, horrors I had made up my mind to bear in Albania, and here truly they were in earnest.
Hotel California could be good. Let's try it.
Finding somewhere decent to stay was a perennial problem for Lear. Thankfully, not for me.
Well, welcome in Albania. That's room 502, and it's up on the 5th floor.
Brilliant. Thanks very much indeed.
See you later. Thank you.
Thank you.
The square used to be dominated by two large statues, one of Stalin and one of Enver Hoxha. This is all that remains of Enver Hoxha's statue. At the end of the regime, the people physically tore it down.
The years of oppression finally came to an end in 1991, after massive pro-democracy demonstrations in this central square. The people of Albania were to win their first ever taste of liberty. But some aspects of the old Albania have been preserved. Albania's heroes still look down from the communist-era mural on the National Historical Museum that dominates the square. The most famous of Albania's heroes is Skanderbeg.
And here's the old man himself, Georg Skanderbeg, carrying his distinctive sword that was so heavy, apparently nobody else could lift it, and wearing a hat consisting of the head of a deer.
I was glad to leave Tirana and its horrible calm, and rejoiced in the broad green roads that led northwards through a wide valley below the eastern range of magnificent mountains, on one of which, at a great height, stands the once formidable Croia.
Croia was famous as Skanderbeg's stronghold. In his journal, Lear was well aware of this larger-than-life figure, and the town inspired some of his best Albanian drawings, including this one of the old bazaar, which amazingly is little changed. It's been preserved because Croia was one of the few official tourist centers under the Hoxha regime where the party elite could spend their money.
Enver Hoxha made a big deal about Skanderbeg. He identified himself with the great Albanian hero. Whether the rest of the population agreed with him or not is another matter. But certainly Skanderbeg is held with great affection by the Albanian people.
Skënderbeu ishte një strateg I madh ushtarak. Ka shpëtuar gjithsej 26 betejë. Ka fituar 24, ka humbur vetëm 2 kalat. Skënderbeu njihet në gjithë Europën si mbrojtës I civilizimit evropian nga invazioni osman. Po kështu Skënderbeu njihet si mbrojtës I krishtërimit.
The museum is a shrine to Skanderbeg, but I looked hard to find one original artifact. From Croia, Lear headed north, across flat, malarial land.
When Lear was here, he had a problem getting down to Shkodra because it was very boggy and it rained all the time. It was in the autumn. But it looks to me as if they've drained the land very well and it's very productive now. Some pack horses. Now look, this is exactly what Lear would have had to use. These pack horses. This is the route into Shkodra. seems to be typical of roads into towns in Albania. But they're working on the roads. I mean, next year, this will be a 2-lane dual carriageway straight into town, and I'm sure the roads will be very good, but at the moment, it is very dusty.
Shkodra was the regional capital, once known as the Siberia of Turkey, the back of beyond for any Ottoman official. Amidst all the chaos, there are signs that Shkodra's collapsing infrastructure is being finally updated. But there is still the ubiquitous concrete bunker in the corner.
They're positioned so that they can fire straight up the street. One wonders what they were expecting. Whether they were expecting tanks to come down, rolling down the street. But from where? This is inside Albania. It is most bizarre. Did you think Albania was liable to be attacked by foreign powers?
According to politics, then, to tell you the truth, it was difficult, and we hadn't had problems with the world at all.
The politicians really thought that they may be attacked.
Yes, the politicians did. This was to protect the country. We weren't for aggression, but to protect our country. That's why they have been built. Enver Hoxha used to say that Albania is a rock of granite. Nobody can break it.
Somewhere in the city centre is one of the best kept secrets in the history of photography, if I can find it.
I thought this was a road, but it's not. I thought it was back there. Oh, this is more interesting.
Eventually, I found someone to show me the way.
You've heard about it, though. I mean, it's...
Well, yeah, sure. There's a lot of people who come here.
Uh-huh.
It's a part of our culture, right? So it's a good thing. It makes us proud.
It's quite difficult to find.
Yeah, look at that. It's like...
Inside this building is one of Albania's national treasures, a unique collection from the early days of photography. It's interesting to us because the growth of photography would eventually make it tough for topographical artists like Lear to survive. The Merubi Collection is looked after by Mrs. Samiha Osmani.
What can we see? Hey, look at this. Wow. That's number 5. Look at this. Can we see that? Wow, look at that. Isn't that wonderful?
This is a very old costume. It dates from the year 1860. It's a costume from Zadrina, and it's a photo by Merubi using the early collodion process. And the photographic emulsion has been applied by Merubi himself.
So, how is it that all these are here?
Well, as we know, Merubi was Italian, a Garibaldian Italian. He attempted to assassinate the mayor of Piacenza and emigrated together with his wife Maria, who was a nurse.
It looks as if there are hundreds here. How many plates have you got?
In this archive, there are approximately 250,000 glass plates. It is full of middle-class people that have worked and lived in the city of Shkodra from 1862 onwards. But it also has historical events and sites from Tirana, Durrës and outside of their borders.
Let me show you these. These are paintings from Edward Lear, 1848.
Yes.
And I wondered if there was any possibility that you might recognize the dresses.
This is a typical Catholic woman's dress. It is very old. This front of the dress I have seen similar in Merubi's negatives. On the inside, the colour was purple, actually. It looks like it is a mixed costume, because on the headscarf, Shkodrës Catholics were different, with loads of expensive jewels on the forehead, depending on the economic status of the family. Maybe this costume is even older.
I think the really important thing was the immediate rapport that he had with the landscape. I'm sure that photographers would disagree with me on this, but it seems to me that cameras now, it's a separation between the artist and the landscape, which with Lear didn't exist. He was immediately in that landscape, and this was what was around him. He was part of it.
This is a devil of a place to find your way around. Apparently, there is a lake around here somewhere, but I'm damned if I can find it. It's only the largest lake in Albania. Perhaps it's time to visit the castle.
Here is the palace of the Pasha of Shkodra. When Lear came to Shkodra, he was invited by the Pasha to come up for a meal, and he came up here and had a vast meal, including a lot of different kinds of drink, including, much to his surprise, a bottle of Bass's Pale Ale.
This restaurant used to be the stables.
Well, it's a fitting end to a place where he had a great meal, and it's turned into a restaurant, so that's a reasonable result. Ah, finally, we find the lake. I've been looking for the lake all afternoon, and Lear couldn't find the lake either. And it's not surprising, because there's no way to get to the lake. It's all marsh and swamp there. And on the other side of the lake is Montenegro.
Below the castle is the lead mosque, known for its lead cupola, which seems to be the worse for wear since Lear drew it. It's lost its minaret, and the floodplain has not been kind. However, it too is now being restored. I'm now on the way back to Tirana. But first, I want to see what rural Albania is like.
Albania's flat coastal plain gives the impression of being unchanged since time began, but it wasn't as intensively farmed in Lear's time. Then it was marsh and forest.
Today's agriculture, although it appears from a bygone age, is a legacy of Hoxha's attempts at modernization. The Foruku family is being helped by a neighbor and his truck. I lent them a hand as well.
Too much? Meer! On the side. Meer erbij. Kan je gaan naar het toilet erbij? Ja, ja. Die jongen hebben ze praten voor graden. Ja, dat is joh bij Meer, paar weg stoot door. Gaan we hem zo met bochten daar. Kan je maar trainen wat dit schuit ook daar. Fanny, je gaat die zien dit en dat. Die meer kan dat doen. Bro, mashallah niet zo. Alla falli roep toch. Daar ja, samen met hebben. Maar verder, maar verder.
And he says, because I didn't make too much mess, but I'll be coming back this evening to have roast mountain goat.
Whatever you want, even now.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Time out. Time for...
This is your farm. And how long have you been farming here?
It's been almost 15, 16 years since we got our own land. We know each other because we are relatives. The lands over there are my uncle's, and all behind there belong to the other relatives. We are the family Faruku. We know that there are a lot of changes, but we are better now that we have our own land, rather than being in a cooperative during the regime. But still, huge poverty is everywhere, because the petrol has gone up and the land cannot be worked.
And is the land good? Does it produce good crops?
It is very good. Only it needs money so you can plant and work on it.
The beauty of this landscape sometimes masks the struggle that people here have experienced in moving from the old planned economy. A world away in Tirana, night gives the centre the gloss of a modern European city, and the place is booming after years of crisis and uncertainty. There is definitely an air of confidence about the place. Professor Hudri showed me an elegant Ottoman bridge that Lear had drawn.
That's definitely the bridge.
It's the same bridge.
It's difficult to imagine such a scene with sheep, water, a khan or something here. Everything is gone, except for the bridge. Isn't it wonderful that it's still here? Shall we walk across?
Yes.
I don't think we're going to find exactly the place where he stood, because I think it must be over there.
The professor suggested I check out this old Ottoman house, built in 1780, one of the few remaining examples left in Tirana. Upstairs, the restored interior is full of Lear murals, copied from his Albanian paintings. Lear's legacy, alive and well in Albania. Wandering through the outskirts of Tirana, as Lear did, I stumble across this palatial building. It turns out to be the Kino Film Studios, built by the Russians in 1952, when Stalin and Enver Hoxha were pals. Their first and most famous production was an epic biopic of Skanderbeg. I was fortunate enough to meet one of its stars, Adavia Shorofi, who plays Mamitsa, the heroine.
Very proud. In fact, the film was premiered in November 1953, and after coming out down the stairs, I could hear the people say, "That's Mamitsa, that's Mamitsa." After that, it became world famous. In Cannes, it won an award in 1955, whilst I was away in a youth festival in Warsaw. One of the 100 best films of all time in the world's film library. I'm not saying this because I'm cast in it. Even if I hadn't participated, I would still appreciate this film as an Albanian patriot. That is to say, the film represented an unforgettable and immortal era, and it was made in our country.
Berati pushtuin nga turqit. Buri mu vra, unika. Turqit po bëjnë gostit Berat tjerq.
M'fal mamit që të prisha lumtunin me pali.
Turq! Kuda turq?
So many years now have gone by. I was sent into internment and nobody would talk to me because our family was isolated for 15 years.
Adavir went from beloved national figure to outcast in a few years. It is hard to understand the paranoia that fueled the Hoxha years.
So they were persecuting the intellectuals in the same way that Chairman Mao was doing in the Cultural Revolution in China. They were copying it.
Beyond measure, big masses of people, because they didn't only destroy us, the penalised, but they also used to destroy our families and siblings. They punished my brother, they sacked my nieces from their jobs and left them without hope. If people were married, their families were destroyed. A few of us followed our husbands, and I had to make special sacrifices. I didn't think of parents or our children's teenage years, only that my husband should be well and calm. They've destroyed a lot of people. It's irreparable damage. For me, if I hadn't taken pills, I would have lost my mind. It caused irreparable damage.
This simple wall in the National History Museum records the names of those known to have been tortured and murdered under Hoxha. As modern Albania comes to terms with its past, it throws up some interesting and innovative ways of dealing with Hoxha's terrible legacy. This extraordinary building was designed by Enver Hoxha's daughter to be his mausoleum.
Well, let's see if these young people know what this place is. Excuse me, do you speak English?
Yeah.
Great! Tell me, what is the Rinfest?
Rinfest is a festival for all the teenagers for their talents on acting, singing, and being a model.
You're a dancer?
Yeah.
Excellent. And this place,
the pyramid.
You know what the pyramid is. Tell me about the building.
Yeah. Pyramids are places where live pharaohs in Egypt, for example.
And do you know who built it and why?
It was dictator Enver Hoxha.
Enver Hoxha.
Yeah.
To Albania's new generation, the Hoxha years are a distant memory.
From Tirana, Lear went to Durrës on the Adriatic coast, about 30 kilometers.
It took about 8 hours to get there. He had to follow the meandering path of the riverbank.
And he had to cross the river 8 or 9 times before he even got here, and we're only about halfway. Today, on the new dual carriageway, it takes about half an hour.
After the usual tortuous journey and being attacked by dogs, Lear arrived at the once famous ancient port of Durazzo, today's Durrës, the western terminus of the Via Egnatia. So both Lear and I finally reached the Adriatic. Quite a feat for Lear. An epic journey of 30 days since leaving Thessaloniki on the Aegean coast. But he wasn't finished yet. Reminders of the communist era are all over Albania, but the locals have a talent for reinvention. Here, one of Hoxha's bunkers has been transformed.
This was a public toilet. It's in good structural condition though, because it was built for war. Then it was turned into a public toilet.
Solid concrete. Good old bunker doors.
Sorry. As I said, there was a lot of dirt and a lot of filth here. We used to fish nearby with paddle boats and nets, and then we saw it and cleaned it to use as a store for our fishing tools. As we were fishing one day, an idea came into our heads to paint it up, tile it, make it look refined, and use it to sell the fish that we caught. That is how it all started. Then, little by little, more and more customers came to enjoy the fresh fish, to look at the sea, to kill their curiosity about the bunkers. So, we kept cooking and frying, and now we have a loyal clientele that comes to enjoy it. I wish it had been built bigger. At that time, we used to wonder why they were being built, but now I would have liked it a bit bigger, so I could have had a larger kitchen and more space. The good thing is that we worked on it, we profited, and it came out successful.
It seems to me that none of these bunkers ever had any use in the first place.
Lear struggled on southwards, battling against the poor roads and terrible weather. Poor Lear, he was continually wet. It never stopped raining. Beret nestles in the Tomor mountain range, which dominates the view in southern Albania. Today, it is a significant cultural centre, and Professor Houdry suggested I should see Beret's own memorial to Edward Lear.
Edward Lear made 4 drawings of the town, which are important and well known. With the help of the local newspaper, we organised an exhibition of Edward Lear's paintings and extracts from his diary with his thoughts and impressions about the town. So, through this, people became more familiar with the life and works of Edward Lear during his time in Beret. He puts it quite nicely in his diary when he says that the costumes of Beret are unlike any others in the region, in that they give off a bright white light. And here we see what he means, in his drawings of the national costumes, with the brightness of the long fustanellas.
Vizatimet e kostumeve kombëtare me atë bardhësinë, me ato fustanellat e gjata.
Yes, you're right. They're amongst 2 of his best and most well-known paintings. From a technical point too, I think they make it clear that he was a true master, especially in capturing the atmosphere of the town.
Sidomos situatat e natyrës së qytetit. Një mbrëmje, Mosque në qytetin e Beratit, Mosque, pjesa e...
I think this painting is called Dusk in the town of Beret, and he has done it with such finesse. Note the mastery of the sun setting behind the hill and the castle. It gives a true impression of the sun setting. It's very expressive.
Do you think that the drawings are very accurate?
Yes, it is true that they are very accurate as far as topography is concerned. In fact, I've seen photographs taken around the same period, and early photographs taken at the end of the 19th century match up topographically. The only part that has changed is the section encompassing the river, which was subsequently rerouted to meet the needs of the town.
Below the castle, people gather for their evening promenade along the riverbank, as they have always done. On the horizon, Mount Tomor keeps watch. From Beret, Lear headed back to the coast. One village on his route was Polina, the village and monastery being all that was left of the ancient city of Apollonia.
Lear came here and stayed in the monastery. Apollonia was an important Greek seaport in the 7th century BC, but now the sea is 20 kilometers away. The whole of the plain has silted up and is good farmland, and towards the sea on salt flats, very good for bird watching. Lear noticed one Doric column here to the south on a rise, but otherwise he didn't notice anything. There wasn't anything here, it was all underground, and they've subsequently revealed a great deal. From Apollonia, Lear came to these salt flats on horseback. He noted in his diary that he saw what he thought were 500 or 600 regimented lines of white, oddly shaped stones. And as he approached them, like one, they rose into the air. They were, in fact, pelicans. Pelicans still come here today, but unfortunately, I don't see any.
Vlora's burgeoning tourist expansion is typical of the way things are going in Albania. His next stop was Avlona, today's Vlora, where he stayed with 2 Austrians who insisted on talking politics, something not to Lear's taste.
In no sense was he political. I mean, he makes a few remarks about political things, but very few. It didn't interest him, so there wasn't any of the anarchic breaking down of man-made organizations. One of his contemporaries likened him to an admiral. He was tall, he had good bearing, and he was an English gentleman. He didn't leap and bounce around like his Limerick characters did. He left that to them to do. Spiritually, he was doing it.
Lear had a real spirit of adventure, and after leaving the relative comforts of Vlora behind, he decided to press even further south, across the mountains, into regions barely visited.
His Austrian hosts arranged for a local guide to take Lear over the mountain region and into the wild and isolated Greek enclave of Himari.
Lower down in the descent, a migration of Kamarians, the most restless of people, met us, some 80 or 100 women, laden as never women were elsewhere. Their male relations taking it easy up the mountain, the ladies carrying the capotes as well as babies and packages. Heavens, said I, how can you make your women such slaves? Oh, Signora, said Anastasio, to you as a stranger, it must seem extraordinary. But the fact is, we have not mules in Kamaria. That is the reason why we employ a creature so inferior in strength as a woman is.
The region of Himari is a Greek-speaking enclave opposite Corfu and almost cut off by mountains. Lear found the people more sophisticated and flourishing despite their remoteness. Historically, the links with Corfu have always been strong. People from the area worked as migrant labour in the olive groves there, a fact Lear had noted when he had first arrived in Corfu. Lear reckoned he was the first English traveller to reach here from Vlora.
Kefur, barbun. I'd love calamari, please.
All right.
Fabulous.
One portion?
Yeah, one, I think. Would be good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Byron in English, Byron.
You're called Byron because Byron, the painter Edward Lear was maybe 20 years after Byron came here. Maybe you're a descendant of Byron.
Viron introduced me to his friend Hercules.
He's offered to try and find, with the help of local knowledge, the place where Lear painted this particular picture, and I'm hoping that we're going to find the right spot. Good. May I?
It's extraordinary, but it hasn't changed a bit, and even the old town looks the same. It's got the same buildings in it. Isn't that wonderful? It's unchanged in 160 years. You used to come up here as a boy.
Here? I've lived here, grew up here. The picture is exactly Himara. It's correct. From top to bottom, it looks as it was.
Himara is different to the rest of Albania.
Himara is a beautiful place. It has 3,000 years or more of history. And in the time of the Ottoman Empire, we fought to defend our inheritance. Our tradition, our religion, our language, our writing was all learnt through Greek. In 1945, Enver Hoxha shut down our schools, and they only reopened this year.
Himara town now has 3 or 4 big hotels. Is this a good thing?
We should have more, but they don't permit us. Tourism could make progress, but they don't allow us. They come and demolish the buildings. It would be better if tourism develops, so our sons who emigrated can come back from Greece.
Tepeleni, the birthplace of Ali Pasha. Here, Edward Lear encountered reminders of one of Albania's most notorious despots in a long line of despots who, like Enver Hoxha, left his relics everywhere. Ali Pasha's presence would haunt Lear's journey from now on.
The last town before the Greek border, Gyrocasta. It is noted for its domestic architecture, the style of which came about through the constant feuding of its inhabitants.
The houses in this singular place have a most independent air, scattered here and there, standing on crags and precipices, or on little isolated levels or platforms of ground, each adorned with whitewash and arabesque painting, which gives the whole building the most pleasing character and finish.
It's perhaps ironic that the largest and best preserved of the houses is Enver Hoxha's birthplace. Now, it's a museum.
Lear was overjoyed to find the perfect cairn. Unfortunately, it rained most of the day, so from his window he drew people until he could sketch outdoors. One of these remarkable sketches shows the renowned aqueduct built by Ali Pasha.
I'm looking for the aqueduct.
Yes, I can help you. Yes, it's all completely ruined. It was ruined by King Zog.
Zog?
Yes.
The bridge was used to bring water from the mountains into the castle. Around 1935.
35.
King Zog ruined it because he needed material in order to build a prison. About the picture, the artist observed what was around at that time, because the dresses are the original dresses of that time. Dresses with the ferrage.
Yes, he describes the white face with little holes.
Yes, only the eyes. When the king came to power, the ferrage was taken off, banned. The king brought a European feel to the country. The king took away the ferrage, but also took away the people's money as well.
During the Hoxha period, were the houses in good condition?
Some houses, yes, but the rest, no. The ones they found interesting, they would restore them. Whilst many, for example, someone's house who was dubbed a political enemy, they wouldn't restore it. They would leave them destroyed, ruined. A lot of famous and known families, artists, poets, which he thought were intelligent and superior, he would kill them because he didn't want to have them in the country.
The town is dominated by its castle, which now has a modern added feature, a strange relic of the Cold War. A crashed US spy plane, once exhibited here as a trophy, has become a photo opportunity for young people. Perhaps it's an apt symbol for how times have changed in Albania.
But Edward Lear is unique to me because I have spent most time getting to know his work and I value all his creations. Despite the arduous conditions in Albania then and its poverty, Edward Lear tried to see with affection the places, the beautiful Albanian nature, the Albanian costumes, and not only myself as an art critic, but also all Albanians value Edward Lear for the way he presented the Albanian lifestyle of his time, with love and realism.
Despite my initial misgivings about Albania, I've really rather come to love the place, and I'm very pleased I came.
And I have also been privileged to witness an Albania enjoying its first taste of liberty after years of dictatorship. Now I'm about to cross into Greece, where I explore Lear's fascination with a 19th century dictator